Good morning, all. There are moments when momentum builds. When you think about what we thought was feasible 10 years ago, geo-inspection, life extension, relocation, basic orbital transportation services, on-orbit SSA. There were conversations about basic manipulation and simple repair of unprepared spacecraft, conversations about refueling and advanced mobility services, end-of-life disposal, even active debris removal was part of the conversation. And then we moved to robotic on-orbit assembly, routine maintenance, refueling infrastructure. Then there were even bigger dreams, autonomous assembly and manufacturing, how satellites as platforms can be refueled. And then there are moments that arise from inflection points. So we had a need, a thirst in the community to come together, and you saw NASA actually lead the a coordinated event with other, coordinated initiative with other interagency working groups across the federal government. There were lots of, OSTP had put out the report on trends of space technologies, and actually talked to some of you in the room about what was needed to, I'm going to use our OSTP tagline, to achieve our nation's greatest aspirations in space. And at the time, it seemed like coming together and talking about it was enough, but we didn't quite get to the point where we needed policy to come in and help empower our federal departments and agencies and help resolve some of the factors that we saw that were preventing us from moving ahead. Now let's talk about those a bit to see, so that you could get a sense of how far we've come. There were certain enablers that we saw. There's firm demand from civil space, from the commercial sector, from defense. There's certainly R&D, there's research and development and demonstration funding for both small and large businesses through TR09. We saw some regulation that was enabling commercial on-orbit servicing, assembly, and manufacturing capabilities. And there seemed to be a clear licensing pathway to getting a yes for mission architecture, for space traffic management. And then there seemed to be, as a routine part of our mission and architecture trade space, there was an encouragement about on-orbit servicing. You saw, there was the one NASA mission, OSAM-1, and then another. However, we had some challenges. The demand signal wasn't great enough. There was regulation that was seen as roadblocks to adopting and using some of these technologies, or preventing the advancement of some of these technologies. There were international partnerships that needed to be strengthened. And there was investment, and this includes work on export control that we needed, access to spectrum that we needed to address. So we get to 2 years ago. The interagency comes together, and if there's one thing the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy is good at, we're good at bringing people together and convening. And we brought everyone together. Everyone from the very enthusiastic, well, let's go on and start refueling in space today, to the, why do you need this? We had the spectrum in the room. And what we realized is that the capabilities being requested not only meant that we needed to go the distance together, but we realized that this needed to be a whole of community approach and that this community was siloed. There were those in transportation, those in robotics, those in robotics for Mars, and those in robotics for the lunar surface, and of course on orbit, and a plethora of orbit agnostic services. And it is now time for us to meet this moment, because we see life extension, relocation, repairs of GEO for currently unprepared services as capabilities that we know the community can provide today. The refueling services, on-orbit transfer, not just from LEO, cislunar, the lunar surface, GEO, MEO as well. Improving sensing and imaging of space objects. Support for human spaceflight activities. We are embarking on a huge transition in low Earth orbit as we move from a government-owned and operated International Space Station to one that will be owned and operated by a private sector, a US private sector entity. And there's, of course, a space sustainability issue of the timely removal of space debris. And this is a moment where the community, together with our international partners, as we develop standards for all of these activities, as we develop the next set of capabilities that will be used between now through 2027, between 2027 and the next 12 years, and then later, as we determine what our approach is to really creating innovations and leveraging the innovations we currently have to, again, achieve our nation's greatest aspirations in space. And this is one community that can do that. And this is why COSMIC was created and funded, because the Biden-Harris administration understands the importance of us meeting the moment. They understand the importance of US preeminence in space and in multiple orbits, on different surfaces, on different corners of certain celestial bodies. And the activities that you all are going to embark on or continue to embark on, but do so together with our federal departments and agencies, with academia, with the private sector, and with our international partners through other collaborative efforts, is one that is needed today for us to meet our mission and to meet our goals. So this is not just a civil matter, it is also clearly important to our national security enterprise, particularly space mobility and logistics. Now, in policy, we say to go fast, go alone, to go far, go together. And this is an example of us going together. This is an example of us working with the executive branch, but also the legislative branch, and then across our different groups and organizations to ensure that all our capabilities not only maintain US preeminence, they not only contribute to our goal with our allies and partners in ensuring that we go together with them for the security of our national interests and our interests as international partners. And for us to go far together, we have to get our own house in order and collaborate and have a strong community in-house. The work that has come out of this effort and will, moving forward, will continue to inspire other nations that have picked up in space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing. It has created has germinated a seed in other nations who are eager to ensure that they join us as these capabilities become proliferated. And it's important that we meet the moment. So I want to thank you all for being here. This moment is ushering in greater collaboration, increased creativity, more innovation in our capabilities. And through COSMIC, we believe that this will enable us to achieve our mission, to achieve our aspirations, and also to close gaps, both the gaps that we are aware exist today and the gaps that we need to close to be prepared for tomorrow. I'll give you an example of gaps we are aware of. These activities require regulation, some of which we have thought of and some of which we have yet to address. And we are already working on regulation to improve this work. I've got a colleague on the National Space Council side who's been working hard on this for over a year, Dr. Diane Howard, who's in the room. And if there is any hesitation that we are taking this effort seriously, both on the standards development side, on the advancement of innovation and our capabilities, on the regulatory side, I encourage you to talk to me or Diane or our hosts here who have taken on the task of ensuring that, again, we meet this moment, ensuring that the people in this room and online, the people in our departments and agencies, the people in the private sector, all our stakeholders nationally can come together to ensure that the capabilities of the future in space is developed in a cohesive way, is no longer siloed, and helps us accomplish our mission. So I thank you all for being here, and I look forward to hearing more of what we can do together. Thank you.
Good morning, Ezinne. Joe Anderson.
Hi, Joe.
Hi. So for, it was about a year ago maybe, a number of us here testified before the National Space Council, I think it was, around the novel space activities and regulation of that. Could you speak a little bit more about what's transpired since then and what we can expect going forward?
So the great thing about this administration and this White House that the space community benefits from is our enlarged space team. Previously, and this context is helpful for you to understand our landscape. Previously, it was one human in my role and one human in the national security, on a national security desk. And they covered all of space, if you can imagine that. Today, my portfolio isn't particularly light, but in addition to an OSTP space lead and a national security space lead, we have the National Space Council, which has a strong team that is tackling, in this case, this specific example, this regulatory work. And our work is deliberative for a reason, but I can assure you that despite the impediments, despite the challenges, my colleagues are moving closer and closer to the finish line. And we hope that what you see as a result of that, again, clears the pathway and clarifies any questions about our priorities or our intent to ensure that, again, we can continue to leverage innovation, create innovation, both what we anticipate we will need and those that we do not, that will meet our mission and meet our nation's goals. So I can't say more about the timeline, but there is a lot of work that has gone into that, and with hope, you will see the results of that work soon.
We have a question in the back.
Dr. Uzo-Okoro, I really want to thank you for coming here and talking with us, but I run a small research company. The thing we always worry about is the research dollars and the program dollars to fund the innovation here. You know, we don't have the depth to be able to do this sort of investment on our own. And I'm going to ask you to focus hard on dollars that are going into the SBIR program and the off-ramps from that. Prior administrations have starved small business for R&D dollars, and prior administrations have insisted that all of the programs be public-private partnerships that starve out and block out small companies that do not have large investment behind them. If you can put some of your notable talents to addressing some of those issues, we would be thankful.
Thank you for those comments. I was not going to recite our strategy goals, the 6 strategy goals, which many of you know. We started out by putting out a vision and then putting out implementation tasks, actionable tasks, this of which is one, to achieve our vision. And the first of those goals is on advancing R&D. I will challenge you to expand or be broad in the scope of opportunities within the federal government. What am I thinking of? I'm thinking of AFWorks and Orbital Prime and those accelerator programs which support not just startups, but small research firms as well. I'm thinking of the Defense Innovation Unit, which is elevated to report directly to the Secretary of Defense, which has been a champion for small R&D, skunk work type efforts. And thinking of our university partners, I hear from universities who say that they're building they're putting together a consortium in this region of the country or in that region of the country. And I said, well, you should probably call NASA and be part of the greater consortium that we are building so that we do not create more silos, but instead we go together. So the SBIR program, while it has its benefits and its challenges, there are other avenues that I encourage small research firms to explore to ensure that you're getting the greatest benefit of funding, R&D funding within the federal government.
We have a question from online, from Brian Benedict. What is the view of OSTP regarding how to get a congressional funding line to pay for active debris removal of a meaningful amount of US-generated space trash?
We'll start with the technical issue, the technical part of the question, and then move to the strategic part of the question, and lastly the policy piece. Technically, you obviously have to demonstrate a technology for us to ensure that it is feasible. And one thing the government does is we've gotten pretty good, particularly on the civil side, in buying down risk. And so buying down technical risk is important. And sometimes, before you even buy down technical risk, you have to assess how much that risk is worth. So one of the tasks that NASA has, and they've partly delivered on this, is to assess the economic risk of some of these missions, some of these remediation missions. And that's the first step. That's work that has to be done before you go and try to pick up a paint chip that's moving at over 80,000 miles an hour. Now, strategically, there are questions we have to answer about who owns what debris, particularly if you're speaking of small debris. For large debris, those are tracked and characterized and easily understood. However, for small debris, it's important for us to determine what is within our bounds nationally before we approve or give the license to remediate such debris. And then on the legislative side, it is actually a great thing that you've got activity that started off, I gave you a bit of the history, activity that started off as workshops at OSTP and then led to a White House vision and then led to activity on the Hill. That shows that a lot of you in this room use the numbers you have of your Congress representatives and your senators, and you call them and you ensure that they are doing their part as well. So that's a good thing. However, when you have multiple ways to attack a problem or multiple ways to resolve or move an opportunity forward, I think we have to be open to multiple approaches. And there are benefits and disadvantages, some would say, to the approach that the executive branch used, or to the tasks that we put out, this including, this is one. There are some in the international community, for instance, who would prefer to be in this room right now and aren't, but we've got other organizations for that, and again, we needed to come together strongly as a nation first. So similarly, on the legislative side, we see it as a good thing that they are trying to attack this problem through their own means and through their own appropriations. However, we all have to be patient and sometimes even exercise some grace as we all sort out, as they sort out, as we sort out what gets to be funded at what time and what risks we are alleviating and at what time. So it's a nuanced problem, and I think it's better that you have more eyes on it and more individuals in different branches of government trying to do something about it than if it were nothing or silence.
So question, we've talked about one of the charters for COSMIC being to promote domestic capability in confers, international collaboration standards and so forth. I'm curious, from your perspective in your office, you kind of get a chance to oversee and look at the policy directing all of that in the different domains. From your perspective, your vision, how would you like to see American industry, American government agencies, international partners, what is the right balance for ISAM as it matures going forward?
Thanks, Tom. I'll give you a short answer and a longer one. It's U.S. preeminence in space, period. In LEO, we'll start there, we do not want to yield to the alternative. In space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing seems like this large toolkit, but it really does have its tentacles in everything we do in space. And with the transition of the International Space Station, the docking services, the berthing services, the grappling, inspection, all of those services that are necessary for the work we currently do in LEO, for some of the work we will do in LEO, require ISAM capabilities. And so it's important for us that this moves forward. Then you think to the Artemis program and the Artemis Accords. You mentioned our international partners, and I mention them a lot too because it's important that we do not go alone, that we have seen that there has been a seismic shift in the sentiment people are looking for in space exploration. And that shift is that they want to see more countries go together. So it is not an accident that one of the fourth astronaut that's going as part of the second mission of the Artemis program is Canadian. So we are going together, and the more partners we take with us, and these are not just existing allies and existing partners, but also new faring nations, the more that we take with us, the more successful we will be. Because I'll tell you this, while some may argue the US does not have to lead on everything in space, what I say is we want to be in the center. And if we are not the dominant power, if we are not the leading force, then we want to at least have a strategic and strong role amongst our partners that are conducting any activities in space. And then when you think of the servicing activities that are required in GEO, same thing, or the robotic services that are required as we move from the lunar surface to Mars, these all require that we develop capabilities that ensure that we have preeminence and that we develop capabilities that ensure that we can meet those civil missions. And then I'll take your question a step further. Well, this has already been said in the public domain, but the moon and some other locations are not the same. They're not as safe as they were 60 years ago. So we have men and women here in uniform whose job it is to protect your company's assets in whatever region you want to go to. And the regulatory work that I'm speaking of is so important because it ensures that we not only advance and achieve these aspirations, but that we achieve them in a way that is secure and protects your research in space, your exploration activities in space. So how do we enable the men and women at the Department of Defense and the intelligence community to ensure that we can conduct all these innovations? The word calisthenics comes to mind, this innovative calisthenics we're playing, and not playing in a childlike or infantile manner, but these innovations that will move us forward. And they take it very seriously. So from our perspective, it's just absolutely critical that we not only continue to have US preeminence, we not only have the capabilities, some of which General Olson mentioned here earlier, but that we can actually protect, because it's just not the same playing field. The question is, I said we don't have to be the leader in space. We want to be at the center. What I said was there are many areas in space. Space is just a burgeoning sector. It continues to expand. In some cases, space is a utility for people like telecom and our Ubers and specific sectors. We do want to continue US preeminence. We're very clear about that. There are certain areas that we would be comfortable with an ally leading. It doesn't mean that we are taking a back seat We would like to co-lead with that ally. We would like, if there are new ideas that certain countries have, we would like for them to come to us as the preeminent authority in that space and say, we're thinking of doing things this way. We're thinking of leveraging this innovation in a new way. And we want to be able to continue that relationship because the playing field is getting wider and wider. But US preeminence isn't going to change for us. We want to always be the preeminent leader in capabilities while working with our allies and partners. Thank you all.